Hello, I'm Laquesta Burak and welcome to Focus on Africa. Our top stories this evening. Under fire, Sudan's Prime Minister survives an assassination attempt. He says it won't stop the path of change in the country. Fears over the coronavirus outbreak hit the financial markets. Billions wiped from stocks around the world. New York is forced to briefly suspend trading. Also in the programme this evening, taking the veneer off the Gambia's pledge to save its endangered forests. It is a multi-million-dollar trade in Rosewood, smuggled from Senegal into the Gambia and then onto China, with devastating consequences. And as the world marked International Women's Day over the weekend, we ask, just how are we doing on gender equality on the continent? And coming up in the sport, the race is on to secure a top spot in the English Premier League as Leicester City host Aston Villa. Hello there, and thank you for joining us on Focus on Africa, coming to you from BBC World News. Well, first this evening, Sudan's Prime Minister, Abdallah Hamdok, has survived an attempt on his life. His motorcade was targeted with explosives and automatic weapons in the capital, Khartoum. Sudan's Security Council has condemned the attack, while Mr. Hamdok himself says it will not derail the political reform in the country. The situation in Sudan has been fragile since public protests forced the former president, Omar al-Bashir, out of office last year. Daniel Henry has all the details.
Someone tried to kill Sudan's Prime Minister today. These pictures were taken shortly after a blast rocked the vehicle that Abdallah Hamdok was travelling in. He was making his way to work before his car was attacked.
The convoy was hit by an explosion and gunshots at the entrance of the cover bridge. Neither the Prime Minister nor his team was harmed during the attack, except for one member who has a minor injury in the shoulder from falling from a motorcycle.
He eventually made it to his desk and wanted the world to know about it, posting this message on social media, saying nothing would stop Sudan's transition to democracy. The posts had the desired effect among the supporters, who cheered the Prime Minister's survival. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack. No one has died. And yet, the repercussions will be felt beyond Khartoum, in a country still searching for stability and peace. Daniel Henry, BBC News.
Fernando Mandi has been following the story from Nairobi and he joins us now. Fernando, this appeared to be quite a sophisticated attack. What more details have we learned about who could possibly be responsible?
Yes, so far no one has claimed responsibility for the attack, but the Sudan government has straight away called it a terrorist attack. And information from the information minister says that it was targeted with explosives as well as automatic weapons. So it's quite clear that whoever was involved was somebody who knew what they were doing and was aimed at sabotaging Sudan's current transitional government, at least from what the government is saying.
Has this in any way derailed that journey towards democracy in the country?
It appears that this shows exactly how precarious the situation in Sudan is at the moment, in spite of the existence of our transitional government. Mr. Hamdok was appointed to head this government, which is consisting of civilians and members of the military. But there are still those who are still in support of the former President Omar al-Bashir, who was ousted last year because of protests. The other underlying issues here is the state of the economy, which is still crippled and is still biting. And there have been complaints that in spite of the food protests, which led to the ouster of the president, up to right now, there are still situations where the economy isn't going the way the people wanted. There's also a string of people, or a section of the South Sudanese people, who feel that the reforms they wanted have not been carried out as fast as they would desire. And there's also concern from some members of the military who do not wish to see them tried and prosecuted for past crimes, as has been indicated by the people who led the revolution.
OK, Ferdinand, we'll leave it there for now. Speaking to us live from Nairobi, thank you very much. Now, the head of the World Health Organization has warned that the coronavirus outbreak has spread to so many countries that there's now a real risk that it will indeed turn into a pandemic, but it's still possible to control it. But the global impact has deepened. This weekend, for example, an oil price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia caused the financial markets to plunge. Initial losses in New York were so steep that trading was briefly suspended. And around the world, leading markets fell during the day. It followed a massive drop in the price of crude. Demand has reduced because of the virus, and so Saudi Arabia responded by increasing production. And that sent the global price into freefall. You might think that's a good thing at the pumps. However, a drop in oil prices often means economic slowdown. So how are we doing globally? Well, there are now more than 110,000 cases of coronavirus around the world and more than 3,800 deaths. Italy is now the worst hit country outside of China. There has been more than 360 deaths and 16 million people under quarantine rules that have just been put in place. And as we turn to the African continent, well, the first coronavirus death has been confirmed in Egypt, with 3 more confirmed cases in Tunisia and another 4 in South Africa. There are now more than 90 cases confirmed, therefore, across the continent. And those new patients in South Africa were actually part of a group who'd returned from Italy last week. Well, Southern Africa health ministers have been meeting in Tanzania to try to discuss the region's strategy and preparedness to fight this epidemic. Our reporter, Sami Awani, joins me live from Dar es Salaam. So, Sami, what have they decided then?
Well, first of all, Lucrezia, the meeting was aimed at, meeting all the health ministers to share any information, any updates regarding coronavirus in the region. But also it was an opportunity for them to decide really how can they coordinate with regards to preparedness, but also response. At the moment, the region hasn't been as much affected as other parts of the world. But then they have come up with some agreements regarding how they can prepare for this. For instance, they said the leaders from this region will suspend temporarily the face-to-face meeting, and they said that we want to use as much technology as possible, so Skype or video links and stuff like that, to conduct any meetings that they will have between now until the outbreak has been contained. But they've also, agreed to increase more awareness among the public, in terms of washing hands. But also they said the region, countries should use the available institutions and organizations with regards to procurement when it comes to medicine or anything like that. But also they agreed on sharing, resources in terms of training and supporting, medical officers when the region is trying to respond to this outbreak.
Sami, thank you very much for that update. Now, the Emir of Kano, one of the most powerful traditional rulers in northern Nigeria, has been dismissed by his own state government after a lengthy dispute. Muhammadu Sanusi II became the Emir in 2014, shortly after he was sacked as Nigeria's central bank governor, when he exposed corruption in the oil sector. Now, the BBC has learned that the Gambia has exported over 300,000 tonnes of internationally protected rosewood to China since President Adama Barrow came to power in 2017. And much of the timber is actually trafficked from neighbouring Senegal, where the felling of the trees is illegal. Under Mr Barrow's administration, it's estimated that over 500,000 trees, thought to be worth over $130 million, according to Chinese import figures, have been shipped to China. Well, Umaru Fofana reports from Casamance in southern Senegal, near the Gambian border.
This is a sound of an environmental catastrophe. It's illegal work, but it's a risk many are prepared to take.
Is everyone okay?
Because of the huge price this wood commands overseas. In what used to be a thick canopy of trees, this is all that is left. The rosewood in these forests are protected by an international conservation agreement. The Senegalese government has gone further by making it illegal to fell or export the timber. Despite their protected status, the exploitation of these trees continues unabated. Now, there are warnings that unless there's a drastic change, seeing them alive like this could be a thing of the past. Haider El Ali is a former Senegalese Minister of Environment. He has spent almost 2 decades campaigning for the forest.
C'est la Gambie qui doit arrêter l'exportation du bois de veine. Et eux, à chaque fois, ils font de bons discours, ils font de bonnes promesses, ils disent on va arrêter, mais en réalité, ce n'est pas vrai. Ce n'est pas vrai. Ce n'est pas vrai. Parce que tous les jours, on voit les trafiquants.
Senegal and Gambia are locked together in an awkward embrace. Other than its border with the ocean, Gambia is surrounded on all sides by Senegal. And the Gambian border runs deep into Senegal's forest interior. We filmed the Rosewood crisis along a 170-kilometer section of the border around Pata, Fafakuru, and Villengara in the southern Senegalese area of Casamance. We identified at least 12 depots full of rosewood and other timber, using local informants, drones, and satellite imagery. All of these depots fall within Gambian territory, and all have been active since Adama Barrow's government came into power in 2017. Under his administration, the equivalent of over 500,000 West African rosewood trees have been shipped to China, despite the Gambia depleting its own forests years ago. The country currently has an outright ban on the export of rosewood. But undercover footage shot by the Washington-based Environmental Investigation Agency shows just how easy it is to smuggle out the timber. One of their investigators posed as a buyer and set up meetings with known Gambian exporters.
We are doing smuggling. Smuggling. Everybody is doing smuggling. Every Chinese here now is doing smuggling.
The undercover footage points to high-level Gambian government complicity in the trade.
We have a table with the minister. Likely, we can call him and invite. You understand? You show him what you like. What type of work
make an agreement.
We will make an agreement.
The minister they are referring to is Lamine Diba. He is the country's environment minister. Africa Eye cannot independently verify the trader's claims. In a statement, Lamine Diba said the allegations regarding his conduct were false and clearly unsubstantiated. He said the current export ban would continue to be extended and enforced vigorously. But in February this year, this truckload of rosewood logs was filmed sneaking through traffic just outside the capital. If this trade continues, it may soon all be gone. Umaru Fofana, BBC News, Casamance.
You're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Lakwasa Burak. Still to come on the programme, we've got the sport, and age is clearly nothing but a number as this 75-year-old grandfather sets his sights on becoming a professional footballer. Good for him. Welcome back. I'm Lakwasa Burak. Now, on Sunday, events took place across the globe to mark International Women's Day. The day not only recognises the achievements made by women, but also brings awareness to those obstacles that are still in their way. And this year's theme was Each for Equal. Don't know if you saw that. Anyway, globally, if current trends continue, it'll be another 257 years before men and women achieve equal pay. Now, a recent report found that $12 trillion could be added to global GDP by 2025 by advancing women's equality. Equality pays, obviously. And according to the UN, there is a direct relationship between gender equality, women's empowerment, and climate change. And it is a hot topic at the moment, isn't it? And this is all due in part to their dual roles in producing food and managing household responsibilities. let's discuss this further. And I'm joined now by Verlaine Diane Subroyudu, a women's rights activist who works to promote women's leadership across Africa and the diaspora. And I'm also joined by Mianda Mayembo, a Zimbabwean farmer and owner of Tanaka Seedlings Farm and Ranch, actually putting equality into practice. So let's just start off, first off, with Verlaine. Thank you for joining us, both of you. But Verlaine, you focus a lot on women's leadership, particularly young women. Where do we stand with that?
Thank you so much for inviting me and for the question. I think you've raised a very important point. It's going to take us 257 years between we achieve equality between women and men when it comes to gender equality pay. And this reality is even starker, if I may, when it comes to young women. Young women face countless barriers and challenges in their lives that seek to deny their basic human rights. When you look at safety worldwide, we have 200 million of young women and girls who are victims of FGM. You think about abduction of young women, forced marriages, and then you think also about the space that's shrinking for women when it comes to being able to raise your voice and talk about issues that matter not only to you, to your family, to your community and the world. But there's also the need for young women's voices to be recognized. And I think, for instance, of our young sister Vanessa, the climate activist, since we talk about women's rights and climate activism of Uganda, how do we make sure that the voices of young women, and particularly young women of color, are recognized not only on the continent, but worldwide? So I think we're at a stage where we need to encourage people to listen more and to open the space. I've launched actually yesterday an initiative that is called Zaha Stream that seeks to bring together young women with a very simple motto: is a jacket, confidence, and a role model. We can start there in empowering each other and looking at how we can make sure that young women are not left behind when it comes to making sure that men and women stand not only equal, but together.
Verlaine, I just want to jump in because we hear so much about women's empowerment. What does that actually mean?
Women empowerment is doing the right thing. Women empowerment is coming together, men and women, and understanding that half of the world population cannot be denied access to public spaces, access to raising their voices, access to their basic human rights. I have a good sister of mine from South Africa who always tells me the first thing I put in my bag before I even leave my house, before I put my clothes on, are my human rights. So gender equality is just about human rights. And 25 years ago, women across the world came together for Beijing. And of course, there's the famous statement that women's rights are human rights. So gender equality is really about coming together on that level.
OK, Verlaine, we're going to cross now and speak to Mianda, who is actually there on the ground doing it. Mianda, you are a woman in a traditionally male industry, the agribusiness. You're feeding a nation. What's that been like for you? What's your experience been like as a woman?
It hasn't been easy. And in fact, you know, when people send me messages, they address me as sir. And what makes it worse is that my voice is masculine. So they actually think they're speaking to a man. And when I eventually meet them, they look at me and think, oh, okay, he's actually a woman. So it's a huge challenge. The work is manual. The farming sector is manual. The work is manual. Access to finance is very difficult. Access to land is very difficult. In fact, recently I was chatting with somebody and I said to them, if somebody wanted to access traditional land, what do they need to do if they're a woman? And he said to me, well, your husband can do that for you. And I found that a little bit strange because the assumption is whether you're a man or a woman, you should be able to access land. So it hasn't been easy at all as a woman in a traditionally dominated
And briefly, Mianda, I mean, you're in Zimbabwe. What would you like to see happen to make things easier and better for you?
Well, obviously, access to finance is a big issue. You know that the currency here is not very stable, so you're constantly racing against the local currency, against the US dollar. A lot of the inputs that we purchase are now sold in US dollar currency. So it makes it really difficult to operate any business, and it's not just in the farming industry. And obviously to see a lot more women getting into the agro sector.
OK. Verlaine and Meander, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Thank you. And I hope you had a great day yesterday. You are, of course, watching BBC Focus on Africa. It's time for the Sport Now memes.
Lukwesa, good to see you. Thank you. After a busy English Premier League weekend, there is the one football match to look forward to, and that kicks off in just over an hour's time. Leicester City are third in the table, host Aston Villa, who are battling relegation and are second from the bottom. Leicester City are fighting for a top 4 finish as they chase a Champions League spot. Nigeria's Football Federation says medical facilities at all clubs must be checked before matches can go ahead following the death of a player on Sunday. 22-year-old Nigerian footballer Chineme Martins died after collapsing during a game for his club, Nasarawa United. BBC's Adebola Adebanjo in Lagos with more on the story.
The death of Chineme Martins, a Nigerian footballer in its top-tier league, the NPFL, has come as a shock to its football community. The 22-year-old defender slumped in his side's home match against Katsina United on Sunday and was later pronounced dead at a hospital. The club and the league management company, the body in charge of running the league, have since come under scrutiny from its football fans in what they say is a poor state of medical welfare in the league. This was particularly obvious as the ambulance present at the ground failed to start as they tried to get the player to the hospital. One of Nasarawa United's medical staff also mentioned to me earlier that a defibrillator was present at the ground, but it no longer worked. The club is yet to release a statement, but the NFF and the LMC have said that there will be no further matches played at any ground except there is a complete medical setup present. The LMC also is expected to give an autopsy report on the late player.
All right, the Indian Wells tournament has been cancelled because of concerns about the spread of coronavirus. Their tournament, a combined ATP and WTA event, which is one of the biggest and most prestigious outside of the Grand Slams, was due to start this week. Health officials in California said there was too great a risk to hold a large gathering of this size. The decision to call off the tournament was made after one case of coronavirus was confirmed in the local Coachella Valley area. No doubt affecting some of the African tennis players as well. You've probably heard friends or family tell you this over the years. You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream. Well, a 75-year-old grandfather is doing just that. He's aiming to become the oldest professional footballer ever, and he did that by scoring on his debut. Ezzeldin Bahadir needs to play 2 full games to qualify as an entry in the Guinness World Records book. He started in impressive fashion, playing a full 90 minutes despite injury on Saturday for the October 6 team in the third tier of Egyptian football. The father of 4 and grandfather of 6 scored from the penalty spot as his team drew 1-1. He plans to play his second game on the 21st of March to achieve the record.
I became the oldest professional footballer scoring a goal in an official game. This was something that was achieved in the last minute of the game that I thought I wouldn't achieve. I was injured, and all what I hoped for was to continue for the full 90 minutes and play the next game. Today we played so hard. I was injured, and I wanted to continue the entire 90 minutes in any possible way. I played with an injury, and I wanted to stay fit for the next game. We performed very well, and I scored a goal I was waiting for.
Brilliant. That inspires me to chase more of my dreams. Lucrece, I'm sure you've got some as well.
Do you know what? There's hope for us yet. Well, OK, no, not you. There's hope for me.
Oh, stop it. For both of us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mimi. Great to see you again. And just to remind you of our top story this evening, Sudan's Prime Minister, Abdallah Hamdok, has survived an attempt on his life. His motorcade was targeted with explosives and automatic weapons in the capital, Khartoum. So that is it for this evening. Don't forget, there's plenty more. You can find me online. I'm at Lukwesa Burak. Until tomorrow, cheerio.